On this week's episode of ResiWeek, we talk about marketing to millennials and how one top integrator has created a custom econ site just for them. Then we talk about SnapAV and the SureCall signal boosters, how they can help you bring not only a new vertical to your business, but better cell reception to your clients. And last but not least, we talk about Sharp saying, no, you can't have any panels, to Samsung as they cut off the supply of LCD panels to the big boy in TV retailing. All this and more on ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
ResiWeek episode 46, Millennial Marketing.
This is ResiWeek.
This episode of ResiWeek brought to you by Chief. Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And today, I'm pleased to be joined by Jason Knott. He's the editor of CEPro. How are you, Jason?
I'm great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Then we have my good friend, Andrea Medeiros. She is the director of content for TechHome. How are you?
Thanks for having us. We're doing great. Thanks.
Thanks for coming back. And last but not least, I've got my partner in crime, Tim Albright. He's the founder of AVNation.tv. Timmy,
Hello.
How are you?
I'm cold. How are you?
I'm cold too. I'm wearing like 4 layers and flannel, which Tim tells me is back because that's where I get my fashion advice from Tim. So on that note,
You poor thing.
I know. On that note, let's jump right in. This comes to us from CEPro. A top integrator is targeting millennials with new content with an e-commerce biz site for home technology. This is kind of in the flavor of Blue Apron, Warby Parker, etc. Audio Advice, who is an integrator, a top-level leading integrator, mind you, in North Carolina, has created a new e-com site that is supposed to be tailored to helping millennials specifically understand where they are when they're shopping for home technologies and consumer technologies, and really tailor to them with a shopping experience that they're looking for. Jason, this obviously came from your site. Is this something that, obviously it's fairly new for them. They just launched it, but they also invested, if I'm reading this properly, they invested close to 7 figures, if not 7 figures, in developing this site. Is this an approach that they've found is working effectively for them?
Well, this is, to me, a really significant development. We've talked about how do custom home integrators reach millennials, and kind of the consensus out there is millennials really don't want to install all of this stuff themselves. They want somebody to do it for them. They're tech dependent, not necessarily tech savvy, so to speak, if you want to stereotype the whole group. But they hate the sales process. The sales process of having an integrator come in their home and sit down and look them face to face. We know they're digitally oriented individuals, is just abhorrent to them. So we've been starting to see some of these business models crop up, and primarily amongst newbie integrators, where we've seen some guys who have created these, on-demand economy type of websites that allow a millennial or whomever to find what they want, click a button, order it just like they're doing it on Amazon, and have somebody show up at their door and install it. That's what they want. So the significant part about this audio advice maneuver that Julie wrote about is this is one of the first times we're seeing a CEPro 100 level integration company do this. A significant integrator who is very successful in the Raleigh and throughout North Carolina market, who already has a well-established brand name amongst their customer base, now turn and it's not, this isn't what they're putting all their eggs in one basket into, but they are now turning to this type of a business model. So I think this is a significant type of investment to see a bigger company do versus some of these smaller companies.
Very good. Andrea, you and I have talked multiple times. We've been on some panels and stuff talking about how to sell to millennials. I don't want to say how imperative is it that integrators market specifically to millennials, but how much effort should they be putting into tailoring specific marketing for them? So, market to different groups essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen something similar to this in an integration firm in the DC area called Sight and Sound Systems, but they were first using this type of technique toward builders. And we actually just had an event for builders, and most of the topics are catered toward lifestyle packaging, and how you're going to make sure that the technology appeals to millennials. That's all they're talking about. Jason and I were just at the Total Tech Summit as well with CEPro, and that's the buzz. How do we deal with these millennials? How do we deal with this generation? Voice control has been a huge topic for that. But as far as marketing goes, we've seen a lot of lifestyle packaging being talked about. And then also, this is a great idea, but we've also seen a lot with virtual reality and augmented reality when showing off the technology to the millennial generation. We've seen a lot of that as well. And that was a huge topic, a very successful topic among luxury builders in particular at our recent event for builders.
Tim, as dealers are looking at millennials as specifically their own vertical, if you will, they obviously not every integrator is going to have 7 figures to throw into a custom developed site such as this. But how much of this can they generate just creating relevant content, original content, and, again, answering questions that millennials are going to CNET. And as we've talked, multiple times on this show, they're not always accurate. Sites like that. How important is it for integrators to really drive information towards their customers?
Well, I think it's important regardless of the generation. I understand the draw. The millennial generation is it's either the biggest or the second biggest generation alive right now, depending on which number you look at. Some people say it's bigger than the boomers. Some people say it's slightly less. It's a large group of folks to target to. Now, we were kind of joking off the air, and I've watched and read a bunch of stuff. Don't call them millennials. I'm sorry. Don't pander to them. Don't tell them they're lazy, self-centered, and all that jazz.
So don't put that in their marketing materials?
In the marketing material. But here's the thing.
Just checking.
For you two millennials that are on here, it's something you do have to understand that you are a part of a generation. Jason and I are Gen Xers. We're the small, we're the small ones here, and you guys are in a time in your life where your disposable income compared to and your willingness to part with that disposable income is greater than it is the older you get, and that's just a marketing 101. So the target market and the sweet spot for folks and the reason that they look at either 18 to 34 year olds or 20 to 34 year olds is because marketing throughout history has told us that this is where you grab folks for a lifetime worth of commitment, a lifetime worth of brand loyalty. That's why there's so many articles written. Yes, some of them are negative, and yes, there's some of them that are a little bit not exactly flattering to the generation, but they were written about Gen Xers and they were written about baby boomers, when they were in the same time of life, right? This is where the me generation of the 1980s, that was roughly when the boomers were where you guys are now. So targeting them makes a whole lot of sense. Being interactive with them makes even more sense, right? I applaud them for laying down 7 figures. Be interested to see what their return on that is. What's even more important, not just to millennials, but to any clientele right now, is being responsive, answering their questions when they need it answered, right? That's one of the biggest uses of social media in general, but your website, some folks have chat windows and chat availability, others making sure that you answer email in a timely manner. This is just being responsive. And honestly, it comes down to being really good at customer service and servicing your customers where they live and where their need is.
I think customer service is the right word, right? Because what this really means is that this generation, as far as what I've seen, is they don't want to feel like they're being sold to. So you have to sell to them without being a salesperson or have a sales process that's prominent. They want to feel like it's customer service when you're talking about technology, not so much that you're trying to sell them that technology or sell them the home.
I'll add a couple other quick points if I could.
Yeah.
So if I'm an integrator and I see what audio advice is done and I don't have 7 figures to put on a website, what am I going to do? So there are these this proliferation of referral sites we're starting to see: BuzzTech, HomeTech, Thumbtack, Home Advisors, where integrators can sign up and be subcontractors and let their Google SEO drive the customers to them and start the installation process through them versus having to put all that investment into their own individual site. The other thing is, on your own individual site, you got to be very careful about what brands you're offering up there for sale, because brands like Nest and those sorts of brands, they have to protect BestBuy.com and Amazon.com. They won't allow a small guy to go out there and just start selling Nest thermostats for the same price point you're going to see them on Amazon or BestBuy.com. But what we're seeing is some integrators are actually able, you can put that up on your site with an install price. So it's not the MSRP for the equipment, but it's a price point that's clickable with installation. And then my last point is, and I was curious to see that Audio Advice did this under their own brand name, because one of the dilemmas that we saw happen in the 1990s with security companies, when you used to sell security systems for $8,000 to $10,000, and then Brinks came along with the mass market system, and all of a sudden, how could you turn to a customer that spent $8 or $10 grand with you on a residential security system, and then a year later offer it up for $399? It's difficult to deal with your past customers when you make a move like this. I was surprised a little bit to see Audio Advice do this under their same brand name, because one of the things we saw security companies do was create a secondary brand in order to go this route.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on that you brought up was, how do integrators deal with vendor pushback on stuff like this? Because obviously, Nest and companies like that, they're protecting the big guys that they have massive contracts with. But I can think of a number of companies that we represent, my personal company, that does not allow us to sell or offer anything price-wise online. How do you go about reaching millennials at times when they want to, have that online shopping experience, when your vendors are actively prohibiting you from doing that?
Yeah, I think the solution is what I mentioned. Some of the other companies I've seen is you're able to offer it up on your website with a price, a packaged price that's the equipment plus installation. So it's still attractive. As Andrea says, it's bypassing that sales process that they hate. It's still on demand. They're clicking it, but it's on demand of not just buying the equipment. It's on demand of buying the equipment and having it installed. And from what I understand from talking to integrators who've done that, most of the vendors are okay with that. It's just they don't want you out there competing on a straight MSRP price for the equipment with these big boys that they play with. Very
good. Let's move on to an article that comes to us from Residential Systems. Excuse me. Snap AV. We've talked about Snap, it seems, almost every show recently. They are now offering the SureCall signal boosters. Now, if you don't know who SureCall is a company that has products that allow you to boost your cell phone signal, your 4G LTE and 3G signals throughout your home, throughout your business, etc. And what Snap AV is now offering is a specific home residential line where other manufacturers are usually more commercially focused. As you can see here, they've got a couple different products, but specifically ones that are designed to provide coverage for essentially, 2,000 square feet up to about 4,000 square feet before you get into their more robust commercial type products. Andrea, is this another vertical that integrators can look at, or is this really becoming a market that people have to consider when they're going into their building process or their renovation process?
Yeah, I definitely think so. A lot of these types of technologies, high volume builders are really interested in right now to offer something to their clients, right? It used to be the structured wiring packages that you would see. We're seeing a lot of push for wireless access points, future-proofing the home, just giving the clients the opportunity to install tech aftermarket. That's what we're seeing on the builder side of things. Some of the most popular trends we've been seeing on the builder end is infrastructure and really being interested in that type of technology to prepare the home for whatever the consumers might be demanding. And for high volume, this is what they're really focused on right now, this type of technology.
Very good. Tim, is this something that, it's not as sexy as surround sound or all the normal things that integrators deal with, but is this something that as networks continue to get more and more clogged down, and not traditional Wi-Fi networks, but mobile networks, is this something that really is being overlooked currently?
I think it is. I mean, the first article I ever read about it actually was Jason wrote it. About this as being another revenue stream for folks. It depends on the structure, right? And I am not a structural engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but my basic understanding, and back when I was a tech manager, we had certain buildings that were all concrete, right? And we were actively looking for a solution like this. Now, it was a commercial installation, and so this one probably wouldn't have fit the bill. But it was an entire concrete. Right. If you're looking to extend the cell coverage down into a basement or an area where the client always, quote unquote, always loses their cell coverage, or it goes down to one bar or what have you, why not be the technical expert? I'll go back to what our good friend Rich Fregosa says. He's not an AV integrator. He's not. He is a digital concierge, right? That is his moniker. You are the technical expert for your client. This is an area where, it's a problem that a number of folks have, and it's a solution that you can offer them pretty painlessly.
Jason, are we going to see this type of application be something that becomes synonymous with, your standard lifestyle package, as Andrea mentioned, where you're going to supply, TV and video? You're going to supply some form of audio. You're going to supply voice control and networking, and then you're going to supply mobile, boosting.
Short answer is yeah. I mean, the net, you mentioned it. The networks are getting clogged. I think the cellular network is going to become the quote unquote next utility. Homes are being built much more energy efficient than they ever have been. So the building envelope is so tight that's what makes it hard to get a cell signal out. There was cameras at CES last year that were completely bypassing the network to be cellular-based cameras only. So remote transmission of camera images via the cell signal. And the beauty of this product category is the easiest product demo that any integrator will ever do. They have these remote kits. You can walk up, you walk into the home, you plug it in, you turn it on. People look at their phone. They see their phone bars go all the way to 5. And then they get all excited about it. And then you unplug it and leave the house. And they're like, wait a second, you're leaving with that? they call it the soft sell. It's the
That's
easiest
evil.
soft sell.
And there's your sex appeal right there, right? Because you're selling the lifestyle of what it can offer, not the actual object.
And SureCall has kind of earned their chops in the commercial space, to your point, and they're really making a strong effort to get into the residential space. And kind of a bigger picture of this offering, we all know what's going on with Snap AV. They had that private equity investment back in 2013. They're on a buying spree of companies because when you have private equity investment, it's all about growth. So the fact, I'm very excited that they added this category, and the bottom line is for integrators, it's a win-win-win all the way across the board.
Well, and something real quick that Jason, that I don't mean to take over, Matt, but real quickly that you mentioned, they made their chops in commercial.
My show.
Yeah, I know. They made their chops in commercial. So not for nothing, there are some products out there that have risen up through, a buddy trying to help a buddy out, and whether or not it's the greatest quality in the world. This stuff has lived and breathed inside some pretty intense environments. So it's something that you if you can put it on the roof next to the a giant 10-ton chiller, you could probably put it in somebody's house.
Well, and that's always the big thing is when you look at residential products that, just as you said, come out of commercial environments, they're notoriously better. You look at voice control and pretty much every major advancement in home technology, even down to just basic networking. We're using layer 2 and layer 3 switches in homes now. We're running, switches that are capable of running multicast and all this other stuff that really came out of full commercial environments. And that's how you know that they'll stand up to the day-to-day, now heavy use in residential spaces. So it's very good to see. Let's move on to our last article real quick before we run out of time. This comes to us from strategy.com and our good friend Ted Green. Samsung is in a little bit of trouble. It seems Sharp has terminated their agreement to supply Samsung with LCD panels. As you glance through the article, you will see that the news outlets in Japan have kind of exploded a little bit as this news dropped that Sharp will only complete a shipment of somewhere around 2 million units to Samsung, and then they will stop supplying them. They were on record to supply at least 5 million units to them, most likely this year in 2017, but negotiations broke down with Foxconn and Sharp, and now Samsung is up a creek without a paddle. What does this mean, Jason, for the TV industry in general?
It's tough to say because I don't know if this is a Trump level negotiating tactics being done by both companies, where somebody's trying to push somebody to the brink.
It's a
we
huge
really don't
deal.
know. We really don't know if it's one just threatening to the other in order to get a better deal and all that kind of stuff. But it would just be devastating to the integration community if the flow of TV somehow gets cut off, because what happens to the custom integration community, and you guys know this, is the high volume retail gets the first dibs, and the custom integration company is usually, custom integration world is secondary. And when there's a limited supply, the retailers get the first shot, and installers get the leftovers. And we've gone through this before where they've been a shortage of sets getting to the integration community, and it's a real turnoff for them, especially now that there's momentum with 4K and HDR and everything.
Well, now let's be clear though. If any integrators are hedging their bets on being able to sell flat panels, they're probably a couple years behind as far as market planning. Andrea, with the possibility, as you read through the article, you'll see that there's a possibility that Samsung can obtain panels from their arch rival, LG, if they are able to, whether they renegotiate with Sharp, whether they go to LG. it really doesn't matter as far as who's supplying them, but if negotiations go up and they end up with higher prices on their supplies, we're not going to see continued, displays pricing going down. Forecasting out, is this something where you're expecting to see panel prices continue to rise just based off this?
I feel like it's pretty hard to tell at this point. I can tell you reading this information from a builder perspective is a big problem, because the biggest problem on getting technology to translate over to builders is they have a lot of trust issues.
No.
Yes. So this doesn't bode well for that aspect of it, whether it goes either way. But that's really all I can determine at this point as far as the builder perspective goes, because there's so many unknowns.
Tim, do you see this as strictly the sky is falling, and Samsung is going to come into February of 2017 with nary a TV display to ship because they don't have any panels? Because let's not forget, Samsung has their own factory that actually manufactures panels. It's not like they can't go to someone other than Sharp or LG. There's quite a few companies that manufacture. Just those are the big boys. Is this more a sky is falling, or is this just another bump in the road to displays?
It's a bump, and it's for the first part of this is it looks very much that like Terry Gao and the folks at Foxconn are trying to recover and solidify themselves as a legitimate manufacturer since they bought Sharp. I agree with Jason. It's very much a power play move reminiscent of American business, whether it's Trump or Gordon Gekko or whoever you want to put in there. But what it's going to do is going to cause Samsung rather, to look around the landscape. Let's be honest, we all get in ruts, right? We all do what we've always done because we've always done it. So it gives Samsung the opportunity to look around and see who else is on the landscape, who can help them out, who can supply it. Let's not be coy here. Samsung is one of the biggest manufacturers of marketing companies and sellers of displays. Whether or not they actually physically make the panel is irrelevant, but they sell a lot of panels. Mm-hmm. So somebody's going to come along and say, "Hey, dude, I can help you out. Let's move some things around, or you know what, I'm going to kick XYZ brand out of my factory, and I'm going to make Samsungs now because first of all, there's a bit of a cachet there with that, and you would expect that Samsung would be willing to pay a slight premium at this point because they seem to be in a little bit of a tight spot."
Very good. I think we're going to wrap right there. So thank you all for joining us. Jason, where can people connect with you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott, and you can, of course, follow all the news on CEPro.com.
Very good. Thanks again for being here. Andrea, where can people connect with you?
Sure. If they want to connect with me or learn more about builders, they can go to TechHomeBuilder.com. They can check us out on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, also under TechHomeBuilder. And if you want to reach to me personally, I'm Andrea A. Medeiros on Twitter as well.
Very good. Tim, thanks for joining us and only kind of taking over my show.
Only one question.
One question was one question too many. Where can people
Merry Christmas, Mr. Scott.
Merry Christmas to you.
God bless us, everyone. Where can people find me? Twitter or our website. Twitter is TD, Tim David Albright, on the Twitters. And at this point, I'm looking forward to 2019 when the Bears no longer have the current quarterback
ownership. Hey,
no, same ownership, just different quarterback.
Matt Barkley looked good, and he's got incredibly white teeth.
Yes.
Yeah. Weird. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful episode of ResiWeek. For myself, if you want to follow me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows that cover all of our other verticals. And when you do stop by our website, please check out our underwriters. They support us, and we're very thankful for it. And we ask you to support them. Thanks again for joining us on this week's episode of ResiWeek.